So what we might do with someone who comes in and says, yeah, I've got this problem with these donuts. Like I'm eating these donuts every time something gets bad. What I might say to them is not just stop it, because that doesn't work. If we just tell people, stop it, no, it doesn't work. I might say, okay, donut eating, it sounds like it's a pretty important strategy. I say, yeah, it's super important. It solves like all of my feelings of rejection all day. Like it helps me deal with all of them. Say, okay, well, next time I want you to sit down with that donut and really pay attention. And that person might next time then sit down with that donut and realize, this donut is very good. It's been sitting in the kitchen all day. It's a little bit stale. This actually isn't very delicious. And might kind of realize, oh, you know what? The real reward here is not actually very rewarding. And then, as a result, they might get disenchanted with this behavior. Like, oh, I actually don't enjoy this so much. And another example I'll pull for you is actually from quite a while when I was treating patients in a smoking cessation clinic, because everybody knows that smoking isn't good for you, right? And yet many, 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 many people do it. So I once had a patient come in and he said, you know what, I love smoking. I love it. And he smoked many, many, many cigarettes a day, a couple packs a day of cigarettes. And I said, okay, smoking's awesome. I want you to really smoke. I want you to sit at the table. And in fact, smoking is so important, I don't want you to do anything else. No reading, no coffee, no TV, no nothing, just smoking. And he said, all right, no problem. And I told him I want you to rate how you feel before and after you smoke. We got to make a whole smoking notebook because smoking is so important. I mean, he was thrilled, right? Because every provider he'd ever gone to had said, stop it now. Your peripheral neuropathy is going to get worse. You stop, right? And here I am sitting saying smoke. I want you to
That's
smoke.
Me. Stop.
Yeah. And so what he actually found was that, you know what? He did love smoking. But he didn't need to smoke 2 packs a day. He ended up smoking just a handful of cigarettes a day, 4 or 5 cigarettes a day, rather than the whole 2 packs. Because he found that, oh, when I really just sit and smoke, after a while, I really want to go do something else. I want to go read that paper, drink that coffee, watch that game, do those things. So when he separated it out and got really curious about the process, he did discover that he liked it. And he stuck with it. But for every story like that, there's someone who slows down to smoke and says, oh, you know what, this actually tastes terrible. I don't like this.
And this is the mindfulness aspect.
This is the mindfulness aspect. So and oftentimes once someone slows down and really sees the reward of what they're doing, oh, this actually tastes bad. I don't actually like this. They become disenchanted with it because once you
Although vapes
know that,
don't taste bad these days, right?
Huh?
The vapes, there's
who knows?
Anyways.
But that's why I just tell people, that's why I just advocate for really paying attention to what you're doing and seeing what really clearly is that reward and what are you really getting from it in that moment. And then also we can use other tools to think about the future, which aren't necessarily the mindfulness piece, but just getting really clear about what that reward is can then help us to no longer be so interested in that behavior. We don't have to use willpower to force ourselves to stop. We're actually using our own experience. Oh, you know what? Those donuts are stale. I don't actually want that. I only know they're stale because I slowed down long enough to eat it very slowly and carefully and really taste it.
So you're focusing on the reward aspect, right?
Yeah.
Because you're kind of changing that. So you're talking about the trigger. Your example was the paper that was rejected, but there's so many triggers.
So many.
I mean, so many triggers.
So many.
And then the behavior, which is the eating the donuts, the smoking the cigarettes, and then they make you feel better. Make you feel good. I feel good. My migraine goes away.
Maybe.
But then when you're focusing on it, what is it actually? Is it making me feel
Right.
good? Am I?
Right.
So you kind of can change that. Is that what you're saying? You can
Yeah.
change that reward
Yeah.
feeling.
You can see it more clearly what the reward is, and then all of a sudden it's not so much so rewarding. And you realize that actually there's a different approach that might be more rewarding, which is rather than just eating that donut to forget about my rejection, maybe I'd feel better if I just really sat down and worked with my thoughts.
I know that you work with many people on doing this sort of reward-based eating research, but have they looked at when people engage in this mindfulness activity for, let's say, if it was the eating or smoking or both, and they're thinking about, okay, well, how does this taste? Is it, oh, it's sweet. Ooh, it might be like so sweet. I can't even, there's nothing in nature that's this sweet. And they're thinking about it, and they're sort of, you're getting more of a negative instead of a positive reward. You're getting more of a negative thought, right? In the brain and the reward center, like, does that activation area, like a brain, change from the mindfulness, like during the changing, like engaging in that mindfulness, like behavior, like or thought, like can you like actually calm down some of the reward pathway?
There have been a number of studies with really serious meditators, and I would refer you to some of the work. I know Dr. Justin Brewer has done a bunch of work on looking at actual brain activation in meditators and how during meditation their brain pattern activation can actually change. And when we change our perceived reward value of things, for example, yes, we can change those patterns in our brain. And one of the things that, so Judd and I actually did a trial together where we did a mindful eating intervention for people who said they have way too many cravings that they eat in response to. And the sample was all overweight women. And we gave them this intervention where they had to get curious about their actual behavior. They had to slow down, eat mindfully, and really look at what is the true reward of their doing. And we found that people ate in response to their cravings a whole lot less after doing this training. And it wasn't an effortful intervention. It didn't rely on willpower and trying to change. It really focused just on being curious and being open to observing your experience. And that's what's so, so important. When we use different parts of our brain to be anxious or to be fearful, it's more difficult to also be curious and open to experience. So we published a paper, so Dr. Alyssa Epel and I published a paper a while ago showing that if you ban the sale of sugary beverages, which we did at UCSF all over the campus, and then you also give people a brief motivational intervention where you show them, here's how many sugar cubes are in all the Coke you're drinking on a daily basis. And you give them some information that's kind of this brief motivational interviewing type stuff. These folks will drink less soda over time. Yeah, so it works. Getting rid of it from your environment and then doing brief interventions that actually communicate information, not in a very judgmental way and not in a harsh way and not necessarily in a super scientific way, but just in a visual way, in a way that might be a little bit surprising, like, oh, this many sugar cubes, right? Some things that are different can help people drink less soda. And if people are experiencing immediate rewards with it, I would still encourage them to slow down. Slow down gulping that soda. How do you feel after one sip? How do you feel after 2 sips? Maybe people will find that, oh, you know what? I don't need 16 ounces. I'm really satisfied with 3 ounces. And that's all I need. Maybe you don't have to eat the whole chocolate cake. Maybe just actually a few bites. If you really slow down and pay attention to your experience, instead of mindlessly eating the chocolate cake while you're watching TV or slurping down that beverage while you're, driving, right? So really slowing down and getting curious about how your body feels and what your experience of the thing actually is can help you consume less. In a perfect world, we consume none of the things that are bad for us. But you know what? Like you said, we're not going to find we're not going to find a Twinkie in nature, that combination of fat and sugar with no fiber and no protein, right? These are man-made delicacies that are very hard to resist. So I think it's more of can we learn how to enjoy these things up until the point where they're enjoyable? Like maybe the first bite is enjoyable, the second bite's good, third bite's good. Maybe the fourth bite, you don't feel so good anymore about it. It loses a lot of the flavor by the fifth bite. And then maybe we stop and we're not eating as much of it. It's harm reduction, right?
Do you think this focusing on mindfulness, like when you're engaging in these quote unquote bad behaviors or things that can, lead to negative health outcomes, is something that can be broadly applied? So you mentioned 2 examples, like the eating of, bad foods or junk foods or overeating and the smoking, but like there's a lot of different bad, like gambling. I mean, is this, reward-based learning and being mindful during the actual behavior and kind of changing the reward a little bit just by being mindful of it.
Yeah.
Is that something that
Anything that's
to
an
your
addictive
knowledge, is
behavior, opening up Twitter, opening up social media, gambling, you name it.
So how would you apply that to being like having an internet addiction type of behavior where you're
Slow down, get on the internet for 2 minutes and then pause and check in with your body. How do you feel? How emotionally do you feel? Is that how you want to feel in that moment? How is reading comments in response to something you posted on the internet making you feel, right? And then really evaluating, is this how I want to spend my time? Is this how? Now, so we can use those techniques, but they are hard because scrolling on the internet has that rewarding, that, that dopamine hit. All the people who've studied social media and how our brains respond, it's pretty startling. And taking this pause isn't really rewarding. There isn't a natural reward there in pausing and slowing down and noticing that the donut is stale, for example, right? So that is challenging. And I don't know, therefore, that mindfulness is the whole answer to this. I think there's a bunch of other ways we can work with these situations. For example, I do believe in environmental interventions. If there aren't Twinkies in your house at 2 a.m., you can't eat them at 2 a.m., right?
right, of course.
So it's great to just set up your environment such that it's going to promote the healthy choice. And of course, there's going to be times when you are out to dinner with friends and you're having drinks and you're ordering food and there's loud music and there's conversation and there's all these things. And taking a moment to be mindful isn't really in the cards. So it's not going to be all the time. And what we can do environmentally to help ourselves, for example, looking at menus ahead of time, going to restaurants and making decisions. Okay, I'm going to get this, and I'm going to plan on bringing some home, or I'm going to plan on sharing some, or making some of these decisions ahead of time when we're not in the moment is a pretty useful tool. There's also some manipulations called episodic future thinking, for example. So if you're sitting here with a plate of cookies in front of you now, how would I feel eating these now? But then also, I'm imagining myself in 3 weeks at some event that I wanted to wear a certain dress to or something like this. These exercises where you transport yourself in time to times where you're at future health goals or future other events, and then using that to help inform your decision now. These manipulations from Leonard Epstein's lab have shown some effectiveness in changing eating behavior. They've had people listen to recordings of themselves talking about future goals while ordering fast food in food courts in shopping malls, and they've found that it can influence how much they eat.